truths that no one wants to hear, and this is one of them.
Diogenes, the philosopher who dared to mock the entire world, was not afraid to point out something that many prefer to hide. Masturbation is not the innocent game we were told. It is a psychological trap that leaves invisible scars. And the worst part is that those scars can't be seen in the mirror, but they are felt in the deepest part of your mind. Have you ever wondered why, after doing it, there comes that uncomfortable silence, that kind of emptiness you can't explain? It's not simple coincidence. It's your brain showing you the price of what you just gave away. Because every impulse that seems to set you free actually locks you in a little more. And there lies the brutality that Diogenes spoke of. Easy pleasure always ends up charging a price. The intriguing part is that we're not just talking about a physical act. We're talking about how it affects your will, how it corrodes your energy, how it gets you used to the immediate while destroying your ability to resist. Nobody wants to admit it, but masturbation shapes your character without you even realizing it. And do you know what's the most unsettling part? That most people live trapped in that circle without understanding why they feel weaker, more tired, more insecure with each passing day. Diogenes didn't stay silent, and neither should you, because here begins a truth that hurts, but can awaken anyone with the courage to listen. Diogenes understood that the real battle is never in the body, but in the mind. Because what begins as a physical gesture ends up becoming a psychological pattern that defines how you face your life. It's not about the act itself, but about what it represents. Immediate surrender to desire, the inability to wait, the need to shut off discomfort instead of learning to resist it. That is what he called slavery, disguised as pleasure. The fascinating and terrifying thing is that this habit trains your brain to fail in silence. Every time you give in to the urge, you are practicing weakness. You are reinforcing the idea that your will has no weight, that desire rules, and you simply obey. And if you think about it, there is no greater defeat than that. To lose sovereignty over yourself. That's why, when you try to reach bigger goals, like maintaining discipline, daring to speak in public, or embarking on a radical change in your life, you feel incapable. It's not magic, it's consequence. The mind that gets used to the easy can no longer endure the difficult. Here comes the most unsettling part that few want to accept. The brain works like a muscle. What you train strengthens, what you neglect atrophies. If you train instant gratification, your mind becomes a slave that will always ask for the same thing: quick pleasure, immediate relief, escape from pain. And in doing so, something vital is destroyed, something Diogenes defended tooth and nail: inner freedom. Because what good is it to live in a free world if your mind is chained to a secret gesture you repeat without thinking? The irony is that we think no one notices. We think it's a secret that stays in our intimacy. But human psychology has a cruel way of exposing what is hidden. Your eyes become more insecure, your energy fades, your presence loses strength. It's as if your body were silently screaming what you try to hide. And others, even if they don't consciously understand it, perceive it. That feeling that something in you doesn't fit, doesn't come from nowhere. It's the reflection of your inner battles you never won. The brutal thing about all this is that while you think it only affects your private moment, in reality, it is seeping into your relationships, into the way you work, into your ability to lead. Diogenes would have said it bluntly. If you are a slave in the intimate, you cannot be free in the public. And there lies the truth no one wants to recognize. Masturbation doesn't stay in the dark room. It becomes a lifestyle where weakness disguises itself as normality. And if you've come this far, it's because a part of you knows it. Because there is something inside you that feels you are losing more than you are gaining. That discomfort you try to ignore is, in reality, the only alarm still working inside you. And if you decide to silence it, what awaits you is not pleasure, but emptiness. That emptiness we are talking about is not just a passing feeling, it's silent training toward apathy. At first, it seems like a simple sensation of tiredness or lack of drive, but over time it becomes a permanent state, a kind of gray cloud that settles in your mind. And the curious part is that you don't link it to the habit that causes it, because it disguises itself in 1,000 ways. You think it's stress, you think it's lack of motivation, you think it's routine, when in reality it's the invisible price of repeated surrender. What almost no one understands is that this practice molds the way you process reality. You get used to escaping discomfort with an easy stimulus, and without realizing it, you start applying the same logic to everything. You avoid difficult conversations, postpone important decisions, distract yourself when you should be focused. The circle is perfect. You train your brain to flee, and then you wonder why your life feels stuck. Diogenes, who despised society's masks, knew it. Human beings become what they repeat. And if what you repeat is submission to impulse, your entire character is forged in fragility. That's why when you face a real challenge, the voice in your head doesn't encourage you to fight, it drags you to seek an escape. And that escape is usually the same: to return to the gesture that weakens you. Here's the most intriguing part. What you think sets you free actually programs you. Masturbation is not neutral. It is a language your brain interprets as the norm. You teach it that every time you feel tension, the solution is to give in. Do you realize the danger? It's not just an intimate habit. It's the root of a lifestyle that destroys your capacity to endure pain, to embrace effort, to build something real. And there is something even more disturbing. The more you practice it, the more you feed the illusion that you control the process. I can quit whenever I want, you think. But the paradox is that this phrase only appears when you no longer have control. Because real control is not announced, it is demonstrated. And if you need to justify yourself, it's because the chain is already in place. Diogenes laughed at the world because he saw clearly what others hid. That modern man is willing to lose everything just to avoid facing himself. And perhaps that is the darkest point of all. We don't fear loneliness. We fear seeing ourselves as we truly are when no one is watching. That's why we prefer to take refuge in a gesture that distracts us from the inner mirror. But that mirror is still there, waiting for the day you dare to look at it without masks. Will you do it? Or will you keep shutting down your will every night, thinking it's just an innocent game? The most disturbing part is that it doesn't only affect your mind, it also reconfigures the way you perceive others. You start looking at human relationships from a distorted angle. You no longer see people as complete individuals with stories, emotions, and mysteries, but as pieces of a puzzle that your desire tries to force into place. Intimacy becomes an empty reflection because your brain has learned to seek quick stimuli instead of deep connections. And when the real moment comes to face love or authentic desire, you discover that you don't know how to sustain it. The most brutal consequence is this: when you train your mind for the artificial, the real seems too slow, too complex, too difficult. Then you avoid vulnerability, you run from closeness, and you take refuge in what you can control. But in that apparent control, you are losing the essential, the ability to surrender to an experience that transforms you, even if you cannot dominate it. Diogenes would mock our era because we have traded authenticity for simulations, presence for images, experience for screens. And here arises a fascinating point. Masturbation, beyond the physical, is a symbol of how we live today. We want everything instantly, without waiting, without fighting, without effort. We want gratification without risk, pleasure without commitment, intensity without depth. It is the perfect metaphor for a society that fears sacrifice, but complains about the lack of meaning. Because how are you going to find purpose if you train your mind every day to escape discomfort? The impact goes even further. It weakens your relationship with time. You lose hours you will never recover, but more seriously, you lose the notion of what it means to invest in yourself. Discipline stops having space in your life, because every time you should be building something lasting, you choose to destroy your energy in seconds. And when you finally realize it, the question that hits you is devastating. What would have happened if all that strength I gave away to instant pleasure I had poured into creating, learning, growing? And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. Diogenes, from his barrel, would have let out a ferocious laugh upon seeing how modern man self-destructs while believing he is free. Because there is no worse slavery than the one disguised as choice. And here is the truth no one wants to look at. Pleasure doesn't belong to you. You belong to it. And until you are able to break that dynamic, you will remain a prisoner who mistakes chains for jewels. The question now is whether you have the courage to question what you always took as normal. Because normal is not always natural, and natural is not always healthy. What no one dares to tell you is that this habit, which seems so private and insignificant, doesn't just weaken your mind and body, it also erodes your spirit. Because every time you choose the immediate, you sacrifice something much greater. The possibility of building yourself into someone indestructible. We are not talking about morality, we are talking about power. And I'm not talking about power over others. I'm talking about power over yourself. The one that makes the difference between those who drag chains and those who walk free, even in the middle of chaos. The real danger is not in the act itself, but in what it silently steals from you. Mental clarity, the strength to make decisions, the energy to resist the temptations of the world. And the strangest part is that the price is always paid, even if you try to deny it. You see it in your reflection, in your inexplicable tiredness, in that anxiety you don't know where it comes from. You notice it when you look back and discover how much time you've wasted in a cycle that never gives you anything new, only the same empty reward over and over again. But here is the way out that not everyone has the courage to take, to start saying no, even when your body screams yes. That refusal, that instant of resistance, is what begins to build your new identity. Every time you stand before the impulse and choose not to give in, your mind is reprogrammed. It's not repression, it's transformation. And when you achieve it, the feeling that comes afterward is more powerful than any fleeting pleasure. It is the certainty that you are once again the owner of your life. Now the decision is in your hands. You can keep believing it doesn't matter, or you can dare to experience what it means to break free from your most intimate weakness. Diogenes would laugh at those who justify their chains, but he would applaud those who break them without asking for permission. The question is, on which side do you want to be? If you've come this far, I want you to write this phrase in the comments. True power lies in mastering oneself. Let me read you, because that phrase is not just a simple comment, it is a declaration of war against your old habits. And if you want more uncomfortable truths like this, subscribe right now, because what's coming will be even more brutal. See you in the next video. Or maybe not. Maybe you prefer to keep sleeping among invisible chains. But if you decide to wake up, remember, you don't need the world's approval, only your own. Turn off the screen, take a deep breath, and prove that you are stronger than what your impulse wants you to believe. Goodbye, prisoner. Or should I say, future free man.